so that's May of 1844. A couple months later, 4th of July, the Nativists have a big rally in Philadelphia. Now, before the riots, the Nativists were sort of like a minor party. But after the riots, they became a national party. They grew exponentially. I mean, they won all the municipal elections in Philadelphia and New York. They started fielding candidates for Congress. Louis Levin, the Jewish fellow turned Christian, temperance orator, he becomes a congressman. He's considered the first Jewishman to be elected to Congress, even though he was a practicing Christian at the time. And he had a horrible life, but when he went insane eventually at a meeting, he was up there yelling and screaming, and they had to drag him off the stage. He went insane, they had to lock him up, and he died a horrible death. And then after he died, his wife and daughter both became Catholics. So, the daughter married someone in the Spanish delegation. And the controversy surrounded him, even in his death, because they raised a bunch of money to build a big monument for him at Laurel Hill. And they got the base done. It's kind of like this high, real big. And someone stole all the money. So the monument was never built. And just a couple of years ago, a descendant put a brass plaque on the top of the base to honor Louis Levin. So in July 4th, 1844, the natives had a big parade in Philadelphia. People from all over the country came, different natives in a gigantic parade. And the end result was another riot down in Southwark, down at the St. Philip the Neri Church, who they thought was hoarding guns. And I didn't do a whole lot of research on the Southwark riots. It's sort of out of my neighborhood. But just to recap, that the riots of 1844. Again, this riot down here, though, was mostly the militia versus the natives. The Irish Catholics had deserted the area, and the church did have guns. The priest at the church, his brother worked for the governor or something, and they got some guns from the armory to defend the church in case the natives would want to attack it. The word was they were going to attack it. So once the nativists were able to get the guns, or the police and the army got the guns out of the church, that should have settled it, but they didn't. And the nativists went after the militia, clotheslining them basically. The guys, the cavalry, they clotheslined the cavalrymen, and they also stole a cannon off a ship in Delaware, put rags on the wheels so it wouldn't make noise on the cobblestones, and at nighttime, there wasn't no gas lighting yet, and wheeled it up close to the militia and let them have a blast of whatever they could find to shove in there, chain, and all kinds of stuff. Then the militia returned the volley with their own cannons, and about 19 people got killed in there. And several militia got killed as well. Several military men were killed. And but that's going to be someone else's story to tell. But out of the riots came, the founding of the parochial school system. I mean, so that sort of settles the Bible question, right, of what Bible you're going to read for the Catholics. Schools existed before that, but there was no parochial system as we know it today, or as we used to know it. Yeah. This is just one fellow who I met a descendant. His name is Robert McQuillan. He was an 11, 12-year-old boy who was arrested. He was Irish Catholic. He was arrested for throwing rocks during the riots, and he spent a year in prison. 11, 12 years old. And that's back to the beginning. So that's the end of my story. I mean, there were arrests. Like I said, there was about 60-some arrests. As you might imagine, it was mostly Irish, maybe 40-something Irish, 20 nativists. More Irish were found guilty. Yes?
Did any other cities experience this sort of craziness?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Did any other cities
experience this?
Baltimore, any other cities have this?
Not on this scale. I think there was probably disturbance. I mean, they were burning convents down. They burned a convent down in Massachusetts. Later on, out in, I think, St. Louis, maybe. And that's a pretty Catholic area. Out that way, or in Kentucky or Tennessee, somewhere that way. But no, not on this kind of scale of destruction. No. I mean, like I said, you had 2 churches, 2 rectories, a convent, a school, the goat market, the Hibernia hose, several grocery stores, 60 homes. I mean, in today's money, it was millions of dollars, like 60-some arrested, 40-some Irish. Most of the Irish went to jail. They didn't go. I mean, some people were found guilty of murder, but because it was in the heat of a riot, they only served like 6 years, 3 years. It's like manslaughter, more or less, maybe. What else? A lot of the nativists who got arrested tend to be arrested for arson. You know, nobody got charged for murdering any of the Irishmen. And it's funny, the lawyer for the Irish was Dallas, who became the vice president under Van Buren. And they were Democrats. So I imagine Dallas was vice president of the United States. He became vice president of the United States soon after the riot trials. That year, 44, they took office in 45. And I kind of figured maybe he defended the Irish Catholics because they voted Democrat. So this is a way to pick up some more votes or something, you know. But later on, in the civil trials, when the Irish Catholics were suing the county for damages, there was a law that said if you weren't involved in the riots at all, and your house got destroyed during a riot, you could sue the county for reimbursement. So when it came time to sue the county, Dallas defended the county. So, and the Irish had other well-known lawyers of the day, so they had some good representation. Lawyers who tended to be abolitionists and, you know, worked with the, freeing the slaves and business like that. Yeah.
When you're trying to research the accounts of events, where do you turn to sort of find out the real story, and how much of it was sort of partisan or biased?
Well, the newspapers are definitely biased. I mean, we think of, people criticize Fox News today for being so partisan, and well, that was normal. That's sort of a recent phenomenon that the press is supposed to be neutral. I mean, the Nativists had at least 2 newspapers in Philadelphia, and then you had the Catholic Herald, which obviously is going to tell the Catholic version of it, and the Public Ledger was sort of neutral. I mean, that's where I got most of my information. They had a blow-by-blow of the trials, and they would report literally almost word for word the trial testimonies, but the testimonies don't exist anymore. The court dockets exist, and what they were charged with and when the trial was, but the actual testimony don't exist. So the Public Ledger is what I used, and there's a website called genealogybank.com, and they have a lot of the old newspapers on it, so I used that a lot. And I pretty much read the newspaper for all of 1844, because the trials lasted until January of 45. Trials started almost immediately in May. But then they were tabled because they were still rounding up witnesses. They wound up getting like 182 witnesses. So I read a lot of trial testimony. And the testimony conflicts, like most trials. You're going to pull a person to testify for you, but they're going to tell the story you want. So yeah. But and besides that, there was contemporary books, like all them woodcuts were taken from a contemporary account. Again, it was a nativist printer, so the nativist angle. And then there was a biography of Bishop Kendrick, which was pretty contemporary right after. I mean, he might even still been alive when that, or maybe it was an autobiography. And then that's biased towards the Catholics. So you try to take both sides and read it in the middle. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I grew up in St. Mike's Parish. And, so many stories I heard when I was a kid. One of the stories was there was a train on American Street that was blown up and there was immigrants on it. Is that anything like that ever happened?
Well, in the 1850s, I think it was, there was an excursion out to Ambler and or out that way, and the train had a horrible crash, and several dozens of St. Mike's parishioners died. And I think was there a Mrs. Ambler? I'm not familiar with the history out that way, but I think there was an Ambler family, and that woman was very instrumental.
Mary Ambler.
Was that?
Mary Ambler helped in the train crash here.
Right, and I think they named the station after her or something. Yeah. But there is a pamphlet that I saw. I'm in the book business and come across lots of books and pamphlets and things. And there was a pamphlet that I saw on that incident where the damages were awarded for the deaths and wounded. Anybody else? Okay, no other questions? Oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry, got it. Three away.
Just a little side story. Prior to the riots, a group of Irish men met in Frankfurt to discuss forming a parish in Frankfurt, and they petitioned Bishop Pender, and it was approved. And that was St. didn't, so,
Yeah.
they
Yes.
proceeded.
And after the first day of the riots, there was all kind of rumors flying that the Irish and Boy Richmond were organizing. There was a group called the Richmond Artillerists. I'm not sure if they were around in 1844, but they were around as early as 1851. And they, I'm on the St. Anne's, I'm part of St. Anne's Parish. I'm on the history committee that Father Brady started. And so we're looking at our Civil War vets, and about half a dozen of our Civil War vets buried in the cemetery were with Company D, 1st Pennsylvania Light Artillery, which was the Richmond Artillerists, the independent group before the Civil War. And so there was rumors that the Irish before Richmond were going to come marching down, and Irish up in Norristown were going to come marching down, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Question? Yeah.
When did Fishtown, the name for that community, first start to appear?
Well, the earliest I was able to track it was 1808, and it was already being called Fishtown. It wasn't like, didn't just start. There was in this genealogybank.com database, there's a satirical newspaper that was published by a fellow called The Tickler. And it's in one of my books out front there, I have the whole story of that. And it was a court case that he attended. He used to hang at City Hall or whatever, and write up the court cases or whatever. He had like a legal column in the paper. And there was two women. One was suing the other for slander. And she was called, the woman called her Bristly, her name was Polly, and she called her Bristly Pole and Horny Pole. And the story is that the husband had got a local steer or whatever and slaughtered it, or somebody did, and they gave the horn to the woman for her own pleasure, or something like that. And so this woman, the big joke in the community, is women from Fishtown. And so there's a big joke in the community, and this lady called this lady's name, and the bristly pole came from the fact that she was accused of stealing some kind of bristle from a store. And the guy said that they are from that northern suburb called Fishtown. So that was 1808. And they were fishmonger. He called them fishmonger women at the market, which was down on Market Street at that time. The fish market.
My understanding is Fishtown was east of North Avenue, going through the river.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there was in the One Penny News, which was a paper that was published in the 1930s during the Depression, like a little hand thing, a guy Norris and Almond did. And he had a little map of the original boundaries of Fishtown as told to him by old Uncle Ben in 1933. He was 78 in 1933, so the old Uncle Ben was around as a boy probably in the 1870s. And at that time, Fishtown was considered north of Penn Treaty Park, on the river, just a couple blocks off the river. You know, it was very small. That's where all the German fishermen lived. That's where it got the name. The fishermen of Fishtown bought or leased the fishing rights on both sides of Delaware from Trenton Falls down to the Delaware Bay. Maybe not all of them, but the vast majority. They literally controlled the coast of Delaware. And that's, you know, so when it wasn't just a local fish place for our neighborhood, it was the city, you know. And in fact, my boss, when I used to work at Allen's bookstore, at a fancy scholarly bookshop in Rittenhouse Square, my boss is an old blue blood type from Rittenhouse Square, and he said, yeah, we used to go up to Fishtown to buy fish, but you know, they always gave it out and they wrapped it in newspaper, so you had to put it in the brown paper bags, and you didn't know you walked to Fishtown. Whatever.
I heard a story about the people fixing them homes up down there, and they're getting a lot more expensive and stuff like that. They were thinking about changing the name to Harvey Heights.
Well, some people are calling it Port Fishington, as a mixture of Kensington, Port Richmond, and Fishtown.
Wasn't that area originally called Shackamaxon?
Well, yeah, Shackamaxon was 1,600 acres from the Cohocton Creek up to maybe almost to Frankfort Creek, I think.